How do? So I'm Rob Francis, and I'm a poet from Dudley and a visiting lecturer at the University of Wolverhampton. And today I want to talk to you about place identity in the Black Country. This is chain coral, a now extinct form of colonising coral that colonised its way across an area that was to become the Black Country. So chains run very deep in the cultural psyche of our region. And this particular fossil, single cells spore off, forming chains or honeycombs and very beautiful patterns like this. And this is the very ground that gave rise to important works of the blacksmiths, the forges, the steelworks, and great engineering feats synonymous with this region. Chains run deep in the cultural psyche of the Black Country. So I want to tell you today to be more like the chain coral. And one way that we can look to do this is through the curious field of inquiry known as environmental psychology. Environmental psychology is a interdisciplinary field of geography, sociology, creative and philosophical thought that considers the interplay between individuals and their locations. And they argue that as we move through our locations, our estates, our hometowns, our cities, we make covert and overt bonds through heritage, family ties, through shared and communal memories, and with our landscape and important sites. And this is what Harold Prashansky called place identity. And place identity is as fundamental to our sense of self as our ethnicities, our religions, our class, gender, sexuality. It gets very deep into the self, which is why being like the chain coral is so important. Another thing that the environmental psychologists argue is that maintenance and upkeep of what makes our homes is fundamental to our well-being. And it acts as a kind of mirror or a symbol of how we see ourselves in the world. So, what if you're from an area like the Black Country? A strange, off-kilter, unmappable, borderless region. Perhaps that raises a weird, off-kilter, borderless sense of self as well. You see, the chains of the Black Country are messy. We're not quite north and we're not quite south. We're not quite rural and we're not quite urban. We're a strange mix of green space and grey space. Much of our identity is connected with our industrial heritage, but most of this is now obsolete, ruined, or renovated. We're not quite the same as Brummies, but we stand in the shadow of our older, more successful brother Birmingham. And none of us can really decide where the Black Country begins and ends. Start a row around here, all you need to do is ask, where is the Black Country? And take the canal system, or the cut, as we say, as a fine example. The cut, for many of us, is a site of leisure and pleasure, of dog walks, boat trips, fishing, family picnics. But it shares this sense of wholesome enjoyment with its industrial heritage as well. You don't have to walk too far down the cut to find a pump house, a ruined steelworks, or glass houses. Another clash that we get along the canals is the clash between the constructed, man-made, manufactured, set against the wild, untamed, and natural. Another example of that green and grey space. And we get these curious spots where nature and the natural are flooding and overgrowing the old industrial or urban sites. So when we think of the canals, we might think of wildflowers and waterbirds, but also motorway junctions and railway tracks and housing estates and parks. So on the one hand, it's a place of graffiti and litter, and on the other, natural beauty and conservation. We built the canals with digging and hard labour, built by industry for industry, but what we also built was ecosystem and habitat. And all of these combine and honeycomb and chain ourselves into this strange black country-ness that we have. Which is why I say, be more like the chain coral. So the black country is messy and off-kilter and odd. But I think we can embrace this. We can look to channel the overlooked. We can seek out the unusual and off-kilter areas that make this place so great. And by doing that, we're channeling a sense of otherness within us and a weirdness within us. But importantly, an openness to the otherness and an openness to weirdness. And by uncovering the overlooked, shouting about it and celebrating it, we're sending out a rallying cry to the home of such great cultural diversity. Be more like the chain coral. And I want to leave you today with a little poem that I wrote, titled Field Notes on the Deep Topography of Dudley. Where we're from, rusts of dried bracken mix with bramble barbs against liver-warted walls, pylons. They say don't walk here at night. Avoid the foot crunch of slight paths at 0 hours. We relish the funk taste of the best forgotten. Where we're from, devils set stakes across Sandwell blue brick. Listen, you can just make out their clatter-clack getaways. Where we're from, mosses hoard over brittle borders, we're bricking in the nothing that squats between then and now. Our walls are nowhere bridges too. Where we're from, clandestine games gambled on the limbo of freight tracks. Info lines lurk amongst the silver birch. The trees take back the metal in rough bark gulps and soil swallows. Covered in thicket, built in limestone cliffs, chains, a door. We relish the funk taste of the best forgotten. Thank you very much. Be like the chain coral.